Kendenda Taya Yin, Shesum Banashira, Solo got the chip done that little.
The Venerable J. Rinpoche, J. Tsongkhapa, said in his three principal aspects of the path, listen with clear minds, you fortunate ones who direct your minds to the path pleasing to the Buddha, and strive to make good use of freedom and fortune without being attached to the joys of cyclic existence.
And this is a quiet Janjanapa charge Madeba Siora. This is Balipa, Gundotone, Teletandone. This is our new Munjum Jiggy Dame, Tawala Soba Tezula, Samlutan Gensgora. And then you change number, then you militobate, don't and Dambaho, young Yeshe, the Sangangi. Then Rajibu, Koyatungele Tandus and Maimba. Java Jebe Lamla Yitten Bas. Simjan Tamjet Dunga the Trevechedo, Geshe and Becheva Lumne, Java, Choju Java Tamjet Jebe, and Chavala Sangangi, the Kansatida, and the Tiko Gishoya, which in yes at Stua.
So, what he's saying is that he's addressing those who should listen to this teaching, and those, it means humans, who have they're not attached to the joys of cyclic existence, and they're not totally, what do you say, well, what can you say besides attached? They're totally embedded in, cyclic existence, and have seen the faults of cyclic existence, and think that, that they would like to, cultivate different states of minds in order to, such as compassion and the wisdom that knows emptiness and so forth. In order to, get out of the cyclic existence. And then these persons also want to strive to make good use of freedom and fortune. They have a human life with well, you can say freedom and fortune, or leisure and opportunity, and then so they want to make effort and use that to the best, take full advantage of this opportunity that they have. And also they want to direct their minds to and make effort to the path that's pleasing to the Buddha. This means that they want to make effort to the path of the Bodhisattva, to enter the path of the Bodhisattva, and to practice the deeds of the Bodhisattva.
Di Kyan Tone Sigura, and the Teletari, Bameva, Tongbani Dam Medaba, and the Samlutonga Sigura. And it in the Samlutange de Caresine, Tenju Tenju, Militova, the Tanda Dembeshido, Sungi or Esidua, the Kibun Chumudan, Dengi Tumu, Lamri Tangidua.
Well, during the
Chumuda Timor. Well, somebody, no, Jawajibe Lamla Yidembas. Then you call a Tarvechedu, then you tell you about the Ranchi Wishedu Maimba. Sanjay Kovanto Veshedu Chigusa. Jawajibe Lamla Yidembas, Kibuchimbu Lamdishedua.
Well,
what and that Kibuchumu than drink the Tumu Chumi Lamla Lochangetuzugi. And then Simjet Hamjekando. Sanjay Kovanto Chatechedu, Shunyan Bakunuti, Gekura.
So then, this shows all the different three guiding principles of the path in this one verse, where when it says that this person, listen with clear mind, you fortunate one who are not attached to the joys of cyclic existence, means that you're not the listener is not well, this is really the person addressing the person of medium capacity, or you can say at the intermediate level of spiritual development, where you're not at all attached to the joys, to the happiness that you can get in this lifetime, and that you want to create, create the causes for being released from cyclic existence, and through cultivating the wisdom that knows selflessness and emptiness. So then when it says who strives to make good use of freedom and fortune, that's addressing the person at the level, at the first level, or the beginning level of spiritual development, where so it's, or you can say it's this is a teaching shared with those of small capacity. Then finally, when it says you who direct your minds to the path pleasing to the Buddha, then this is the at most advanced level of spiritual practice, where you're engaging in the bodhisattva deeds to become a fully enlightened one, or a fully awakened one, a Buddha. And so then, thinking of these three guiding principles and these levels of the path leading to Buddhahood, think I will listen to these teachings and think about these teachings with a motivation to attain Buddhahood for the sake of all living beings.
Oh yeah, that is one. Now
we're on the 7th chapter.
Koya Nimi Shebe, Della Kyoa Gebe Chedo, Yansi Penje Lela, Chowdre Combar Cheba de, Della Nis Church or the Shegdo and the Church at Roa. De Gasure, Namuki Miwa, Dayanga Tosulia, Shenjapa Chedo, Tap the Shegdoa. Oh, Della Nis and the Lushum Shebada, Lusan Shebas, Cheni Udwa. What did it?
De la Ni or the Bay.
Oh, the man did it. Liu should take Angaluba, Liu Shung Sheba Shungitan, that is woman, and Liu Ming the Shake, or Nini Kangalua.
So then the chapter here is on abandoning attachment to sense objects on which the disturbing emotions or the afflictions focus. So this chapter is then it has the title of eliminating attachment to sense objects, or you can also think of that as resources. we use the word resources sometimes there too.
No, yeah, that Louis Shungsha, the lesson do Koya Nimi Sambas, Nambo Koag Nimi Sambasera. And it derike you success Lepang Basidua. Koaje, the Gun de Samluta, and the Koaje, Jen Thompson, they Geshe Ducares, success led the tip my Spang but Shagua. Lepang Bekovatamba, and success led the Pana, Kovakario, resident, and Sumbi Shagua.
Then, so here we have, there's 3 different sections to this chapter. The first one is considering the disadvantages of cyclic existence. And then once you recognize the in doing that, then you're going to see the causes of cyclic existence. So then the second section is eliminating contaminated karma, the cause for birth in cyclic existence. Then the third part is explaining the need to eliminate contaminated karma.
Nimi Samba de la Nido, Koachi, Nimi Samba, Shirag, Nimi Samba Niche, the Koachi, Nimi Samba de Lea, Niyungudua, Koala and Jigba Comgo, Chusankar as Koalia. And Joa Mutene Contestia would as Niche. And Tambuda Koala and Jigba Comgo, Chusanti Shake to Andenema.
So then we're going to be. Going to that first section, considering the disadvantages of cyclic existence, which is again divided into 2 sections. One, considering the general faults of cyclic existence, and then specifically eliminating attachment to happy rebirths, so or fortunate rebirths. Then this first one, considering the general faults, is divided into 2 sections again. This is the reasons or why it is necessary to cultivate fear of cyclic existence. And then the second one is how to generate aversion to it or disenchantment with it.
Oh yeah. Tadambo koala ya jigba komgo be jusendi shegdwa. Oh, kowe ju le pangbe chedo tomar kowe nimi samba ko resera. Ene teliane kowe nimi kyo kariyorsne marik pada ngajeda sebale chunves ni karsore. Sebe kundu chora sumju saduki kyabasi. Mishiba che tewange ne ngajeshe. Arwa tewange ne le sobasane. Siba kundu chora sumju sadusna sibalia kiagene tawangemba sumju sadu tuji kyaba tuju ne shingi genshinge sidwa. Tange tuju zangi je chui simbise tawangemba tuju zangi dadezo shemagoche. Tezo ngazu tupte na lyungu do shiriwe mangsha shiriwe tawa tezo shegdwa. Tukba ase ne kichi long kora toma meba ne tujenge kora ase dadenda koalia ne karsure jigube tusen karsune tome maribe kunela rwani ngaje tradola soba ne tawangemba ndamenda o tezo samage ne toma meba ne che tanda bado wandu june ne kwa kwa de yore ser shegdwa.
Yes. Yes. So when we consider cyclic existence, you think about how cyclic existence comes about, and it's due to our ignorance, and then ignorance gets us involved in the afflictions, the other afflictions rather, and then through these afflictions, then we accumulate karma, and and it's karma that then brings about cyclic existence for us, and so then the chapter here begins with one must first think about the disadvantages of cyclic existence in order to give up the contaminated actions which are its cause.
This one, yeah.
So,
Tamaloguda, Savadi. Tungajasun de la Tassigua. Candy Shayora. Tungajasun de la Tasse. Qua Dungi Jasun de Liatene, Tagayo Maresigora. Nima Candese Corre, Tamahobana Candese, Cane Tazo Resi. Yawa Yeda, Dendrumila, Lama Yelake, Ledanishawan the journey. Toma Mevanes Tande, Beta Meverico, Soya Meverico de Rediora. Tunga Jasun de la Tassigora. Number Gundo Yemin Base, Tameban de Jiresgora, Tometa Yomare. That those Cheveni Chimeta and get it the order. Something to Meshaji, no Tendres and Rode Delia, any Chiku Dini Chimbalas or Tendret and a core thing that Tamevan Delia, Chini, Jamsunalia, Jamsu Tata, thing Rimbu Getina Lera, Tam de Yunani, Galekabura Taria, or Dile Lagbachani, Tatan Meva, Rambuda, thing the Tamevan, the Tendesia, Court Devatelia, Jigba Karchan Jigio Maresigora. Chikun Deni Chimbala, Jibachin a Keminjurse. Jibachin a Keminjur de Jigugre, second Rasu Samluta, Otoma Mebane, Dwari to the Kereta, and the Tama Mevatus and Yangude. Oh, Tende Samlutan and Yele, Jibake Jire, Jibake Gures and Gora. What did you love? Let's all the Robs and Devolution.
So then, if we look at the verse 151, the root text here, then it says, when there is no end at all to this ocean of suffering. So here we're considering the faults or the disadvantages of cyclic existence. And when you think about cyclic existence, there's been no beginning to cyclic existence, and then there's no perceivable end to cyclic existence if you look into the future. And so then we're under the power of our contaminated karma and our afflictions, and so there's just only great suffering in all that time. Then it's like being in the example is like being in a huge ocean that has no bottom to it, and then also would have no shoreline. It's like an endless ocean, right? So then we would be afraid in such an ocean. It would really give us a lot of fear. But more than that, then is this huge ocean of cyclic existence. Then why are you childish people not afraid of drowning in it? Well, Stanzas.
Muya, Tadin Jebadima lost Yanni Chibarishra. Tunge Jasun de la number Kundu Yoba Mare, Sara, Koya Tunge Jasun de la. And it's Chibaso, Cures, Orangaranzutabo, let an Yumu Beshawan de June, and then draw it to Sosokia Langang and Aranzutabo de Siora. Koa dina Toma Mebane, Chingni, Geshe Yombre, Tanda Tama Meba Zidus de Aire. Karijan is Jibaki Omar, Tilachi Targu, some Karijan Kogi or Maresungora. Kyoa Minjur de Jibarcha de Esa, or Kyoakan and Jigure, Tiletarachi, Cheg, some Korgo Resungora. When I think that Tangwembe Jasur Jimbala, Tai Jamzutabu, Ting Yorko, Tachambure Mado, Tameva Mare, Tindaji Killer Ranchu de Yona, Tanga Taria Kabure Samje, Jibaki. Dina Coadelia, anything that Ta never is. Tell Jigba Karjan Kigo, my Jibaki regress, Sungua. Yeah.
Then, so, why are you people not afraid of drowning in it? Since it's since we're under the influence of our karma, our contaminated karma and our afflictions, and this has been going on from beginningless time, and we can see no end to it, then the commentary reads, why are you ordinary people drowning in it since beginningless time, not afraid? So if one should fear to drown in a sea whose depth and breadth are apparent, how much more so in this one?
This was we are pena de tanda de cause love is some society was a Marazul society was a door. The lad and yomobe, soso lad and yomobasane, and it Tewage, Nyawa Yida, and the Soso Sopa, Rama Bakio and get the society was a door.
So we translate this as we're ordinary persons, but in the Tibetan it has this idea of individual, and the soso there means like individual. So we individually on our own we're in collecting our own karma and increasing our own afflictions, and then based on this karma and affliction, then and so then we're taking our own rebirths, constant rebirths, and basically passing through this cyclic existence or samsara, and so that's the idea behind just saying ordinary person.
Oh yeah, that better da. Pena transong she ngadan demba she jigdengi taran ro nyamne kangdji tsuji thumbi somdo kangba shane chimbe thama chimbar shine tharge ba shinu sudo. Transong she ngaga yongeji ane jigdengi be thade kandesh do ta go samne tsuji je koran do ades wara ri jabu ri rab kan kangba chi shane toshi de kangba shan tenen do ne be kaze china zoye mebache ane tsepe ba res ro shindo res gora o tarchine ne hala kebra hala kene chimane zambule mele akeche sanje tambala rab du chune o ane sanje so do o kirantene tinde komba jamne chine zoye tanduga teso ta duga so ra ta yoba mares so be keche o dire o tene de
ta yo mares
o kirange sobo chunjun de le pa komba jamne do ne 타요 말에서 타요에서 민도 와서 그래.
So then the story is of a sage who had 5 kinds of the analogy then is a sage who had 5 kinds of super knowledge, and he wanted, it says here, to go beyond worldly existence. Geshe said he wanted to find the limit of cyclic existence, and so then he had this power of miraculous speed. So he went, he set his foot. Let's see, it says here he placed his foot on the summit of Mount Meru, and then went. But then he couldn't find it, so he basically died before he could ever find a limit to cyclic existence. But after his death, he was reborn as a god, a deity, and then came before the Buddha. And at that point, the Buddha said, did you ever find the limit to cyclic existence? He said, no, I never could. No, it's do so.
Language Shawajan be Jibariba, Soso de Kawa K military Halake de let a Yomo be Shawari, Soso Rawajan get the Omarno, or Jesu Kokawaka Drogo to Tende Yomar, language Shawajan be Jibaribas. Koari Jeve Jupala and Beber Tambas. The in the Koa Keji Judiri Pangure Tambasha. Koa Pang Beshedo Beba La Kunu Mebar Pangbo. Koa Pang Beshedo Bezu Chebala Koba Yo Mariso, Goba Marakoba Yoreshe, She Tunze, or Shindua. Oh, Yatina Netunze Tambuda, Langzula Chapa Miribat Shake your Dantinama. Oh, yeah.
So then, here there's a kind of assertion. The next verse is about inappropriateness of attachment to youth, and the assertion here is that though cyclical existence has many disadvantages, those who are proud of their youth and so forth are not afraid. So there's all these reasons for not. Once you're under the power of your contaminated karma and afflictions, then there's plenty of reason to be afraid. But the assertion is, oh, why should I be afraid? And so there's sort of 4 different rejoinders to this assertion, and then we're starting with this one of the inappropriateness of the attachment to youth.
Oh, yeah, Tatambo Langzula Chapa Miribanra. Koya Nimi Maya, Langzula Sobe, Jagbe, Dalan, Jiba Minjungo Shena, Langzula so Yundu Minebe, Teekone, Jaba Miridis. Tamaranzu Samlu Kogiara, Loshon China. Oh, then Koya Nimi Mambota Res, Koala Kanda Mambores. Yena Tandako, Loshon Bashiko Langzuda, and Chitezo, Neda Luda Tezula Chane. And Koali and Jiba Jigmedo, Jigu Maresena, Jibake Yungumendo Sena, oh, Langzola Shenjachene, any Karsode, Langzo de Yurin Duke, Yo Mare. This one's that Langzola Japachen and Ajachene, any Karsode, Koala Joy, make you a Rigmares. No, this one good.
So then, in particular, this one where though cyclic existence has many disadvantages, those who are proud of their youth are not afraid. Here, the answer is that youth doesn't last. Youth fades. So then it's not appropriate to be attached to our youth.
Oh yeah. Langzula Chabari Mares had a call Langzula Nimbuke Omatishegora. Langzu Jabdu Jungjurnese. Langzu de Tanda Shembade, Kanangelia Shigene, Shinitil Tanda Dishung or the Dasugora. Tijia gave the Yungria, she was a dus Yungres. Again, Kengo Chane, Shine, Tanda Tishu, Tiji, the Yandi, do rare. Kotabarish de Marese, Tundasungora. Langzu Jabdu Jungjune, Kebe Jabdu Juni, Langzu di Tande Chongres, Kerangel Kene Shini Tisha. Larian Dundu Jumar Jose, Yanja din Dulia, Keba the Yanja language, she was language and Gora. Nejan Jigdan Dilane, Trojan Damba Tabunese, Langzu da Keba da Shiva da Tezutake, Kena Chisa Tazukaga, Junduche Banashi, Nangeli the Sanashi, Jolutan Yombanashi, but Korche Yondi, Keran de Langzu di. Those days, Tagba de Marese, can go Jenny Shinian till retire, teach till and dinner, but Sanga Jam and Dronganation Yungioris and Gora. So it's we're talking about the reasons to counteract our pride. It's almost like a conceit about our youth, and so the verse then says youth lies behind. And then once more, it is ahead. Though one imagines it will last, in this world it is like a race. So our youth, as we proceed through life, then youth seems to go behind us, and then as we get older, then youth seems to be ahead of us. When we're going to be reborn, and then though one imagines it will last,
in this world, it is like a race. So youth fades, but once we're subject to what do you say, sickness, aging, and death, then sickness, aging, and death are like always one's ahead, and then it's behind, and it's like they're like a traffic jam at some point, and they're constantly. It's like a race, and they're always like close together. One gets ahead, and then the other, and then it fades again and goes behind. So then, youth is not something that is going to always, what do you say, always be with us.
This one. Oh yeah, that didn't develop origina. Send the Lanzo gave a captain John Geshe Stanzas to Sendelia, Tanda Chamber Redeti, Keneti, Gablet under the Chongre Sarah. She ever Dolaria gave a day, W. Yongre Sarah. She ever Dolaria, Dundo, Lanzo that gave at the Panjongre. Gave a Jabdo Yang Lanzo, Lanzo never, Long Mejan say. O can I give a Jabdo Tanda Lanzo Jonatelia? Oh, I look on you some Lombachi or the Najachi or the Jigden de la Ne, Lanzo da, Geba da, Chuanum, Kongo Laos, and Angel doing Angel Leviching, Jusha Dangan and Shiko, Dunge, Doglu Jusha Hagura, Tuche Chamberlain doing it. Kongo Laos, a Trajan Angel Levishing, Angel Levishing, say, Consichi Chile, Geshe and Condenduce. Ya yungu iba nashin re sara. Jamba taburu ngonje negab tela ngonje yese. On dendu chen yungu iba taburu re sara. Negab tela se shembe negab tela ya ene tado neba mebe. Kena de lo shemba de takbar stu degi mare. Keji ben do ne kebe salpan do degi ore sungu ora. Kyakbar miri so se. O te pe tela ya pena til serve kolo timashino. Till number of the day, Colossi Sardo. Did Timna de Timotanda de Yapa, Gelsian, so on the Siora, what the nation called Corge de Giores or the Che.
Young person did Colo de Dream not your the bag.
Oh, Timna de Hagor, did Timna, or did they call to them, Timna de Conduara, Yolopashin, Yasu, Yasu, and the Sioresa. Oh,
they. So then, if we read the commentary, it says, since youth and the like do not last, then pride or conceit on that account is unreasonable. If in this life youth lies behind old age, that's lying behind first, then after death it is once more ahead. And then again, it is behind old age. Though one imagines one can remain young, in this world, youth, old age, and death compete as if in a race, claiming, I'm ahead, but none of them are ahead at any one time for very long. So then, since none can always remain ahead, it is unreasonable to feel proud or conceited because of your youth, or because of that. And then the analogy is of the shadow of a wheel that crushes sesame seed. So it depends upon the light, right? So then sometimes the shadow falls in front, and sometimes the shadow falls behind.
Oh yeah. Niba language, Shawaja in Benjik Base. So draw to the Kawa dead in the Kawaki Nati, let a Yomobag, Shawado Juni, Yungi or Mother, so Rawaja and a middle against a middle dead Deke Maruasera. So Cognua that on the Kawaka to the Kiwanga Massage, Yamuta, Yamoga Sabe, Leggy Digongi, Shawanduchan and Rodegi. Tea and doing Jigba Rigba race of your law. Or language, Shawaja in Bear and Jigba Rigbani, Jigdan Paruto on Droya, De Mijik so Shenase. oh ngaji samne jigden paro dro na she go ya ke yo mare samna oh de kera jigden paro kawa dro ya ha ko ya yo mare nya ho da tendro le da nyamu be shangwa jere ma do so rang do gen dro ya yo mare tin de jigba re sung yo ra oh tele ya do sibar kyola rang do ke se siba koale kera so deba chene ene kyo ya sa de chin tu sa yu sha tin dro ya yo mare se ora dro sha re yo me na nam ya yo ba mare se ora shenge wanda jing me bar lo dan dan ba su shin jurse la nyu je shang chen dro kawa ki dro ya ha ma go na telan jigba me ba dan ja she me go sam de ate lo dro dan ba su shi ju de lo dro dan ba mare se tun dara
so we're on this the next verse, which would be the second section of this, how to generate disenchantment with cyclic existence. So then the appropriateness of fear because of being governed by contaminated karma and afflictions. So the assertion here is though one must go on to another life, it is not frightening. But then the counter assertion is that of course it's frightening, because the idea is that it is frightening because we're totally under the power of our karma and of our affliction. So how can we determine what's going to happen? We could easily be reborn anywhere. So the verse then says, in worldly existence there is never rebirth of one's own free will. Being under others' control, who with intelligence would be fearless? So in the worldly or cyclic existence, then, there is never rebirth of one's own free will. We're thinking, oh well, I can be reborn, under my own power, but nobody has the power. Once you're under the control of contaminated actions and afflictions, you have no control over where you're going to be reborn. So being under others' control, that means your karma and your afflictions, then who with intelligence or any kind of wisdom, being under others' control, who with intelligence would be fearless, would not have any fear, okay? Who with intelligence would be fearless? How could you be fearless in that situation? Don't do so.
Oh yeah. Sibar chiba kyola se chiba susu kyo kyola se ora. De chiba se de phagbe kansa de zo mainge susu kyo la chiba se do. O ko samlo de tang mutung ge susu tenda la ko yaga de do samlo khor mutung ge ri sonza ko chiba se la ge ora. O sibar chiba kyola rangde ge sadan mila sok ben roa sangbo shendo ke wang yo ba mina se. Kirane samlo ko mato de da. Tene kera lada mil sala soba kewa chiman drona sangbo kewa yaga chil droele keran le rawa ke yo mardas ge ora ran le rawa yo mare sam go ora ene kande resne le da nyom ba wange ene tene jigbe ne ga le mande shin do se le da nyom ba wange kewa chima nyamba jirlen ro na tende yo mare te de ko jigba ke ne ga le mande bare ser chira ne jigba me bar lo dan demba sushi juru lenyo je shangwa do kyurbe ta do kyawar chao se karze de mil karze te de kawa kiro so wang che yo mare tende samlu tan tu ta do kyawa je be ne re kyawa sangbu je tobe taushi ma che na nyanga do samsa tangu re song yo ra
So that the commentary says in cyclic existence, or you can think of it as worldly existence, it's just means really cyclic existence here. Childish beings like you do not have the power to will their own rebirth, in good rebirths as gods, humans, and so forth, but are under the control of other factors, contaminated karma and afflictions. So when it says childish beings here, again, it's not. It means somebody who's kind of individually creating their continued cyclic existence, or continuous or cyclic existence, and then therefore they don't really know how to. The childish part is that they, I guess, I think it's saying Chiba probably, and so then these just really don't know how to think or what to do. It's in comparison to like the noble beings. Okay, so it's saying everybody is not you're not a noble being. So then these childish beings don't have the power. You don't have the power, or nothing's under your own power. Okay, you don't have your own independence. Don't have the power to will their own rebirth. And then that means they're under the control of other things, and so the other things they're under the control of is their karma and their afflictions. So being under karma and afflictions, why wouldn't you be afraid? Because there's no certainty at all as to how you're going to be reborn. You could easily be reborn in the miserable realms.
소설 장화게 요마레 춘데 잠주 추첨부지가 파교드에서는 신지 킨도도나 고가와가와 대로네 추슈긴 도에르마도 코라 장화신데 켄두고 요마란 돈 두고 요코 파두고 수두고 요레 코랑긴 두고 세요르데 코랑긴 두고 요마레 장화신데 추슈긴 두고 요르바 디나신데에서 겨와가바 상부도 냠바가와가와 레프트 하고에 요마레 세요라 에페카지레 셴야 셴종아다 남야 셰셔레 페카지레시 Droa sharia yo menas ke doa sawadlia. Droa sharia yo menas. Sibar kyola rando gen droa sharia yo menas doa sawadlia. Oh, droa sharia yo menas peja gyurkhaji nala namya se yungi chera. Pekaji le shenya so droa shenya yo menas yungi chera. Oh, these namya se tondala res gyara.
So one should feel, I didn't read this one part of the commentary, so one should feel repugnance at being controlled by contaminated karma and afflictions. So the example is like a piece of wood floating on the surface of the ocean, I guess you'd have to say, and swept along by the current. It could be in a river, I guess, then, but it's just you go here and there, and being you're under the control of something else, which is for the piece of wood is the current. So then it mentions that some versions of this text that they have one word there that would be a strange word. You wouldn't be able to tell what the meaning was when it says, in worldly existence there is never rebirth of one's own free will. So then, if you happen to see that one word shenyang, which doesn't mean never, then you have to understand that what it means is never, namyang. so the important thing is, in worldly existence there is never rebirth of one's own free will.
This one. Oh yeah. Tangazu dirda sumba dirda. Kore kewe gyupon alam bebar tamba asedo. Kore kejige. Oh, tene gyudi pangurda. Kore de kya kene kore kendugi mena te kejige gyudi pangure se shegdo. Tamgidwa tanga shegdo. Sender tewe chone siba che manu kyang ase. Maumba kyawalam bedo nyamnas. Ada sendelia. Lega mambo yo tewada kibada zamuche da lega mambo shidayo tezu chene ene mawo bale ya yang kewalengo tidu be chore tanda nga koi kia panya ke chuche de tende long me samba ina se gyora me kyawa lan be do shena se tene mawo tama yue me shin se mawo balia tame be kyawa lan gu re se gyora tama ke yo mare se gyora kunsi an so so kyo de tambo yongsa de le ta yo mare ki chema dosa le tame ban ro gu re se gyora kunsi an so so kyo de se tu kunji se kera so so kyo re se so so ge nyamo go ange le ngamba sa ne so so kyawa sangbo da ngamba so so lo pa ki yo re se gyora kyo de chidar te shendo te ame gyro te dar chö se kyo ne debe tu so sibale madro kwale madro che tunge nyang je debe da de na shi ne mao bala da na shi te ne de mo go chi che ku re se gyora kyo de chidar te shendo te ame gyro te dar chö se ba di sa o di je la da debe che lo ma bu ri to
so this next section is advice to make effort to abandon the causes for rebirth and cyclic existence. And so then the assertion here is, though unable to cut through worldly existence in this life because of being enthralled by pleasure, one will try to do so in a future rebirth. You're thinking that I couldn't do it here now, so now I'll be able to, I haven't, but I'll be able to do it in the future. Here the verse then reads, "The future is endless, and you are always a common being. Act so it will never again be as it was in the past." This idea of ordinary or common being means that when you translate it as individual being, it doesn't have much meaning. But if a more literal translation would be this idea that the individual has the ability to you're determining your future, whether you go in a we say a good direction or a harmful direction, or something bad for you. So then the future is endless, and you are always a common being. So you've always been in this situation where you could determine where you're going to go, but so far you've always just been stuck in cyclic existence, and then you're going to be like that into the future. So act so it will never again be as it was in the past. You've been always under the control of your afflictions and your karma in the past. So now you have the opportunity to act, to do something different than what you did in the past.
Toma canere, Titalio, Marison, Gotambu, Susakio, Marisura. Dineshi, Maumbe, Kavala, Tama Dinekana, Zogri, Setuio, Maritin, Deshi, and Rode Resura, Tama Yumishi. Debe Dulayan, Toma Mela, Debe Dulayan, Toma Melan, Debe Tukunjisa. Debe Tunkiran Kadeka de Kavalanja Yomba, Takeo, Marisura. Debe Tu Samatamjil, Kiran Susakio, and the Debe Resura. Soso nyamo shamado so tewange le sange sa tewange ko aketen reshe je debere sigora debe tu kunje se soso kyo kona je ba yinla se kyon debe tu so sibale madro wa chida wa tishna tan debe tu le kyo kaza la yore kole tare tapshi chetu yo mare tanda rawa me ba che kone du se madro re sigora ta tendre ma che sigora debe tulia sibale to Thabkhe machen tanda bodon ro tanda thame bashi de gur tinde mare chitawa teshin do tada da maon bar tame bar mingyo ha da chu shesa tada be sabso cheje maon balia tene nyason da kwal khorme gu ya tene tabshi cheje nyemanan shi tanda me ba sheji che leba na shi member da sosekyo member je phagba che yang ro ya tabshi shesi yara teshin do tada maon bar yang teme bar mingiro te dar chöshi se pekajile te yang she jongwa tarna maombe tu teyan she charus de teyan mingyur te dar chu se duwa zawa de na tsigan tama de ya zawa tsigan tama duwa teyan mingyur te dar chu se duwa de ya de na la teyan mingyur se duwa de jur sanske ne su jure de jur mendra yorwa de shenda chi na la teyan mingyur se yo yesarba ta shenda chi na la Tedar mingyur tedar chuyina tishin mingyur se chi shenda chi yo angira o teyang se de jungwa tarna kare pekaji le teyang shin jungwa tarna maung be tu teyang se she da res gora dinala gyur koran da tumbe gyur ki peje tsu sha do de teyang su do ga shenda chi na teyang de yo ba che shenda chi na teyang me ba shenda chi usarwa Mone chene din gyur medan do di teyang singe de member de shagi na ene de o de pekaji le teyang shin jungwa si lamne ta da chi yora this one
this one
de nyamdo la shana pena shanje peme la chamba zawen do nya chi nya de dar cheba shinu si yora nyamana shije do sma do de na kera shenda ge peme chi nyamdo michi ata kena ti nyamdo mandro slavi na o danga do menda she ya ya de she do de na shi re si yora
okay, so we're on verse number 154. So advice to make effort to abandon the causes for rebirth in cyclic existence. Here, the verse goes, the future is endless, and you were always a common being. Act so that it will never again be as it was in the past. So when the commentary says, future rebirths are endless, and the past is beginningless. The future rebirths are endless, and the past is beginningless. There's no beginning to the past, and again, we can't see any end to the future. So throughout, as has already been mentioned, throughout the past, you have always been, you were always a common being, an ordinary being. You were you never reached to the level of being a noble being, and so then that means you've just always been subject to or governed by your afflictions and karma. So act so that in the present and future you will not be as meaningless as the past, during which you failed to free yourself from from cyclic existence. So here what the commentator is saying is that you should act now to try to become a noble being, trying to reach to the state of a noble being, because a noble being also has freed his or herself from the miserable realms, as well as being able to determine their as well as having attained the ability to determine their future. So then if we then take advantage of this time in order to act like get free of our contaminated karma and our we have to take advantage of this time to get free of our contaminated karma and afflictions, and also any rebirth into the miserable realms. So some versions of this text read again, which should be taken to mean again in the future. So there's different translations. That's why they keep the commentary keeps on pointing out that you should take this word to mean this other word. So it doesn't simply mean again. It's so in the verse it says act so that it will never again be as it was in the past. So you have to have this idea of never again, because otherwise it just sort of says act like it's going to be that again. It wouldn't work. So you have to have this idea of the proper word would then convey the meaning of that it wouldn't happen again in the future. They bade Geshe go to one. Then the example here is of a person whose friends. It was a man who was running around with another man's wife, and so then they, or someone else's woman, it says here. Then his friends kept trying to stop him, and but he did it again later. He was constantly caught in this cycle of running around with someone else's woman. So that's the same as us being caught in this cycle.
Then messing up my Kiwatang Mevalanga, Tunda Meva, Sheji Tola Tang Resugora. Choose and be Luigi when you talk on tension data, Luigi Toma Kiwalanga, Tanda de Tarvatoma Dunga Sheji Yantamber, some young Yone Debare, some de temperature desugora. The rich on Julian Tushu down, Che de Tushu in the Debasham so that the rest of Suche Tarbana, the Ranchibu Maiba, Simje Tomje, Koale Tariak, and the Sanje Koma. Lana maybe Chamju Soyagi, Chevale Shune. And it out under Messi, Chimatozo, Yamanashi member Cheshe, and then Pantoba, Yamoto Pachomne, Tarba, the Tamjaki Bekovan, Tapshiki Sungiora. Sheshe, but the Sibeki was Juncheba, Juncheba and Berguresuda.
So the commentary quotes this one verse from the Array of Tree Trunks Sutra. I think it's sometimes called the Array of Stalks Sutra. You might see that translation. Think of the past bodies you have meaninglessly wasted because of your desires or your attachment. From today, engage in the discipline of seeking enlightenment, and through that discipline, destroy desire. So the Buddha says is here to think of how is basically to you've done so much meaningless, wasted your time in the past because of your attachment. Then today you should instead of thinking about your own purpose, think of others' welfare. And make effort to the bodhisattva deeds and become and seek enlightenment or liberation and enlightenment, and through that then you overcome your attachment. So you basically must break the continuity of rebirths and cyclic existence.
Oh, yeah, Danga did it, Wakasre. Shiba, Koapang Bechidum, Beba, Kunu Meba Pang Basidua, Koapang Bechidum, Bezu Chevela Yakova, Menduase, Yana Bena, Bezu Cheva Yinaya, Bezu Cheva Latene, Koapang, Nuba Yungu Menduase, or Tende Tunzeni with the Papang Balani Sidua, where you turn down, Sendere, Membeba, Shimmer Tulara. Oh, Castle, Coapang Beshidu Temi Resati, Temi Mares, Shisha. Let's send their member about that. You want the college of Tumari, Maya, college begging is not Epa, 가바시 니르 정도와
네.
당보 뭐지 된데다 코안 딜라 타요다 메스다 저용과 코안데 타요래 요 말에서라 아니 타메 타요나 근데 배고미도 하고 타요나 버르지 존두고 콜 탄두고 바스기어라 니바다나 타메나 배조 제나게 팽기 마로 콜 타요 마르도 스코르제 대야르 바세 지 그바다 네바 메바르 셰그도아 코안델 타요다 메세 담보다나 배메고스 저쪽으로 그바 요 마르스 배조 제고 마르스기도아 니바다나 타메나 근데 배나게 저에 네바게 요마 저 토고 마레 배바제바 때문에 레도 하세나스기와라 저저데 때문에 마레스 셰그도 하거든요.
So here, well, in the fourth section here, under considering the general faults of cyclic existence, is refuting that effort to abandon cyclic existence is purposeless and ineffectual. So the first part of this is the actual meaning of the refutation that abandoning cyclic existence is purposeless and ineffectual, and then the repudiating hope for the future without effort in this life. So the question here is, in this first one, is, does the cycle of rebirth have an end or not? If it does, one will gain freedom without the need for effort. I like that one. Okay, let's take it easy. If it does not, effort to cut through the cycle of birth and death is senseless, since despite effort, one will not gain freedom. Okay. So Drisa.
Oh yeah. 다들 렌자요라.
네.
년부 년자 최부 남 중에 신도 녀가 돼서. 상계의 최 최바부 상계다. 지령 중하다. 최 년계다. 최 생계다. 근데 신도 녀가 와래서. 대조 만약에 대조를 때도 코아 탐에다 부래서 요라. 야 대조 니네베 값지네 대 니게 통계의 값들이야. 간사 대조리야. 코아데 탐에봐야 말해서기도아. 되는 돈은 코아데 탐에 많이 타셔면 간사 가실라 때도 탐에봐 말해 타요래. 간사 가실라 때도 탐에봐 레스 티시기도 하던다. 어딜람난 오든 데바 연구도 하고 있죠.
So the verse says the conjunction of a listener, what is to be heard, and an exponent is very rare. In brief, the cycle of rebirth neither has nor has not an end. So it's what it's saying is that somebody who for somebody who's like the recipient of the teaching and the teaching itself, and then somebody who can explain the teaching, of having those come together is a very rare event. And so then it's not something that happens for everyone. So there's going to be some people who have that and some people who don't have that. So then, because there's a variety of people, then you can't really say whether rebirths are going to that the cycle of rebirth has an end or does not have an end, because for some it does have an end if they've met with these good circumstances, and for others who haven't, then it doesn't have an end. Well,
lam gyula kiwe nyamba bo dawa jadan jorba ju sanwe ten kebar chen topne ane lam gyula kiwe nyamba bo chö nyamba bo desi gwara chö nyamba bo dang nyanja te kona ni nyanja chö de ane te kona ni kwa zawa chö chigi dongba ni tenbe song dang si gwara cheba bo chö de cheba bo jikden liya ane tishin shigwa dam jungwa de ane udum wara medo na shingi 신도 녀가와든 중가와래 세거라. tishin shekba keba drame ba sumdo 초석발라 되베 니가와다 상제세데 개바 장미 뭐고 초산이 니고데 대야 지den지 감로 망셔와 민게레 상제 준비 개바데 빼 뇽뇽레세 시다섬레소라 셴니자 텔라 되베나 셴니자 상제바 가와다 지den도 준바 가와나시 최년바보다 최생계의 태바테서 년바보다 년제 최니부터야 아니 신도네 니가와레스 거라 셴니자 텔라 되베세 상제 최체바보 상제 중앙라 되베 대난 도나 코아니 람줄라 제베 군조숨 속배 간사라 되데 어 간상가시 상제 직den도 준바다 대 최송배 동반일라 소바 코아게 타지 최대 체바부여 년바부여 어떤데 군조숨다 탱게 그 간사 되sol라 되데 코아데 타메바 마레스 타메바 민데 코안 독베 주니 속배 절코 코안 도에게 주단께 강가 속바레 상와레스 거라 대다 마속배 간사라 되데 타다 제바 민데에서 어때서 마차배 간사 되sol라다네 코아 타다 제바 마레 타여바 마레 타메바레스 거라 가레스나 데참네 코안도 데 미니베서로 코 마음반 데참네 코안도 그레스 데 독바치 뉘가 마레스 거다 가레스나 코안도 지게 람템바보 체요 마레 땡제 최대 체요 마레 데랑가 체요 마레스 거라 야 데멤바자 야 담베 네루라 때데 코알라 타여바 마이 타메바 마이서 근데 타여다 타메카야 롱텐도 메바야 레스 거라 대숨게 빼들려야 페나 우드모레 메도신스 우드모레 메도세데 벤종가와 꼼보레도와 가시에서는 상게 직den갑로 준비갑로 마도 요마데스도 가시에 꼼보시다레세 가르스름 신장한테 도와주 농부 초시어리 탈지 요리세라 시기도 메도드 우드모레 메도세데 신장 신장 투르키스탄 시기도 어디 초에네 디탈 요리 시기다 내가 심게 말해 어딘데 우드바라 데 가드데 데 양결성을 우드모레 메도세데 메도치버라 어디 고 중앙에 신도 컴보레스기 와라 데 우드모레 메도 상제 중에 갑을 메도치요 셴요 말 생게치도세 야데 신장에 데 초에네 저 디탈이야 Yeshe yoreese 셴요 말에서 근데 시시 단 데바데 칼리사 야부지 말로데
so then to explain this the commentary has a lot of detail, so we're talking about a conjunction of a listener and what is to be heard and an exponent and being very rare. So the listener then is one who has attained a special life of leisure and fortune and is ready to generate spiritual paths, and so that's a very qualified listener. So then what is to be heard refers to discourses teaching emptiness or reality. Or here it refers to it as suchness, that's talking about emptiness. And then their exponents are the Tathagatas. So for those three to happen and occur in the world are as rare, they occur, for those three, these three occur in the world simultaneously as rarely as the Udambara flower. Well, actually the most aeons are like dark aeons where Tathagatas haven't visited. So then it's a very rare occurrence for Tathagatas to visit. So then Tathagatas are rare because they depend on stores of merit and insight accumulated over three countless aeons. So this is a very rare occurrence. Then the other two depend on Tathagatas. That's the listener and what is to be heard depend on Tathagatas. So they're not going to happen easily as well. So thus in brief, for a person who has these three rare and supreme prerequisites for the growth of spiritual paths, the cycle of births is not has an end. Okay, somebody was literal here, that not without an end. So we always have trouble with those double negatives. So the Tibetan has them all the time. So it's better just to say it doesn't have an end. It does have an end. Sorry, it's not without an end. It means it does have an end for such a person who has these three coming together. And so then, and since the causes and conditions for stopping it are assembled. So then in the case of a person for whom they are not assembled, if all these three things have not assembled, it does not have an end. Because one cannot determine precisely when the cycle of births will cease. So then it's said that it doesn't have an end for that kind of person. Then with regard also to its final mode of existence, its ultimate mode of existence, it is not specified as either having or not having an end in terms of ultimate existence. So then this comes to that idea of not, that we heard previously about not answering if it has an end or not an end. You can't really, as either having or not having an end in terms of ultimate existence. So that these three circumstances coming together then is like an Udambara flower. So the Udambara, there's two interpretations of this Udambara flower, and one is that it's a flower that comes only at the time when a Tathagata is in the world. So it grows then, flowers then, and then you never see it again. Another one is that it only grows in the shore of a certain lake up in Xinjiang. Xinjiang is
Turkestan.
Turkestan, is that the way they refer to it, or what is that? The Uyghurs, yeah, where the Uyghurs are, but I can't remember. The Turkestan is the old name, but maybe I think we call it Xinjiang nowadays, don't we? I don't know. I don't know if we know how to pronounce it that way, but.
This one.
Well.
Oh, Daniba sender member Chimetula Rawa Kabasigwa. Oh, that's a delay, college up to Mare, Chuchen, Parvatovia, that in the Chetumare. Joachimal begging some now, did Maresche, Kagdua. Get the song of Neba, the Seto Keveshineta, the Lungbo by Yube, Kewa, Shendo, Siba Sebal, and Bedo, Shenase. Oh, Chusumba Bode, you read was. And then never Keveshin to your race. Long denge, your long sung the Chushange Yube. I give a Chimadwajo, Chushangan, your Chuniore, and then begging Tanda Yom do some Nasiora. Oh, Suram Neba, Nibu Yoja. Oh, Joachima Samutana Keran Suram Neba, that Chushange Yona, Keran de Chunyangi, meet the Keta, make it take a Kabures, Yora. Running Yamba Jurbakatis. Oh, Tishekdwa. Pamucherna, Minamnes, Karesna. Mi pechewa desigora, tamba mayen chonzi yonzise, tamba mayen bade migiwache, migiwe choli ya shechore, chonzi girisgora, o jexin to shevore, o tama chevoro, kondu chevore, chakshin kwari mado, di migiwa panguri se kabure sigora, tamba mayen cho yonzi. Tena soso kiyo na peche ngeba ngendodo, soso kiyo mangcho de peche, Yendrol Mancha de Yores, Yora. Yende Karacho, Yangan, Millikajda, Yondo, you may Chamachivres.
What's that? So this next section is repudiating hope for the future without effort in this life. So the idea is somebody says, "Oh, we can always, attain liberation in the future lives." And so the assertion here is, as long as scriptural texts exist, there will be spiritual friends and oral transmissions of them. Here, the idea of oral transmissions means explanations of them, and also when it says spiritual friends, that's some people prefer that translation for spiritual teachers, but it means a teacher. So then, one may therefore try to end worldly existence or cyclic existence in other rebirths, and there's hope. This person is always hoping that they're going to be able to do it, and in their next life. So then then the commentary continues and says, though the texts and other two may exist, it is difficult to be a proper listener for the following reason. Okay, to be a proper listener, to attain that, because most people cling to an unwholesome direction. Thus, most common beings certainly go to, says bad rebirths here, unfortunate realms, or unfortunate rebirths. So the idea is that most people in this life are involved in anger and attachment and doing things that are harmful to others. So then they're stuck in this in a non-virtuous mode of existence. So then, thus, most ordinary persons are then going to take a bad rebirth. And
oh yeah.
Dr. Isa.
Deba de lojurwa.
Deba de lojure.
Oh yeah. Pan didar pemo cherna se tama de deba jagyora. Pemo cherna minam ne sigdwa. Tamba mai basne megi wachu le ki cholia yonsun simbaris megi wachu de la ma chungre sigora. Oh yonsun simbatena se Lewangi kene sosoro kewe soso kewa namse. Ute sonza ko megewe cho mangba zingi yoza, ene megewe le manga sagi yore sigora. Ime nyomo wangi megewe le manga sagi yona, soso le sabatege, kene de ko nyawa yida tendula soba soso le da tumbache soso dhugure sigora. Kene mangcha soso kewa de nyason le dhugure mado, tada mele kaya kakbure sigora. 소소 교나 배정에 bar 년론 로베 최니 속베 세세 단다 최예 최 제바보 예베급 딜라스고라 최 년발람 배버쳐 단다 년구를 마오바 제가 치마세데 삼르다 요 마레스고라 퇴라 멤버와 따라 타르발라 좀바 메시 바노 단다베 퇴발라 멤버와 나시 샨다 삼루마다 제제 좀발람 배구그레스기도 Oh, the Mabeba Madibere Sersere. Gabo lumber one go ashindose. Oh, the Gaboga Lumbo Gabo one chigramado, one gurma, lumber Gabolia, one kurgmarwa. The Missiban, the city Madibere Sersimendo. Pena Shane, what did you love then? Petty toss Manashetua. What did you?
So the commentary then proceeds. That it's difficult to be a proper listener for the following reasoning. It's going to talk about that. It says that most people cling, to the 10 non-virtuous paths of karma, or paths of karmic action, if you prefer. Let's talk. This is talking about the 10 non-virtuous actions that are harmful to others. Which is an unwholesome direction. So most people in this are clinging to that unwholesome direction, and thus through the power of their karma, they are reborn in different states within, doesn't specify it here, but it's talking about different states within unfortunate rebirths, which would be like the hells, or as a hungry ghost, or an animal. So since most ordinary persons, or common beings, as we can say, or ordinary beings, therefore go to bad rebirths, or reborn in unfortunate realms, one should make effort to hear the teaching while the two prerequisites are assembled. So if you have a teacher in the explanation, in the text, then in spiritual teachers, then at that time, then you should make an effort at that time, when you have those prerequisites, not to strive for liberation as if one's head, then not to strive for liberation as if one's head were on fire is like crowning an idiot as a king. It's sort of like the idea is that you have this position of being a king, and then you just don't know what to do with it. You have all the, all the power, but then you have no idea of what to do with it. So,
Chöni chokbetses de damadira. Chöshenge de chödan chöshenge ni tsone. Kiran nyamba bolo ke kaburesiba.
It's referring back to when it said two prerequisites. I missed that. It's talking about you have the teacher and the teachings, and you're the listener. So when you have those two prerequisites, why wouldn't you make effort? Well,
no, yeah, dandi pederwa pena shin kurwa dan sedo. Pena shane shin kurwa dan. Dawaran Jabataru Sigda Mini Utara Mini then they ringol sing cheche ko sing jabla kuryung sarwa sing today ringol sing che and metan elia jabla kurche yung yora o tene michi man de kuni timbe simbe yorwa simbe dizu na lo lues timbe yorwa o simbe de kurbuni yusha yusarwa langa and michi de oh de sing de sha simbe드 코네 야그레 삼제 그때 유제 버저디 킨도도와 미치 데스나 나데메 싱데라 킨도가 타릉부터네 깔레점디 키소 키용베 따단다 데 킨도기 삼게와라 어디 빼들어와 그래서 가르시거스나 망보지 산제 패비와레 산제게 송베 추 상게와레 소소 녀에 국가비와레데 녀게요 마레스게와라 가르서 나게만에제 나라저 닝바게 추루스네무도 가리나 디디 그루시 용바라 당에 디샤나 디마레 나게만에 디그 단다 디키도 예시키도 그래서 미치데 나싱딜레데 파저디 야그레 tim베디 킨 야그레 삼싱디 파요 쿠르고 야가데 코킨도라 우체자 어디나 시레스고라
So this is a good example of two men who went to fetch wood, and they were returning back to the town, and they put all the wood on the. I don't know if you've seen that, but they just carry all these what do you say, sticks on their back, and so the two of them are traveling down into town with this big load of sticks on their back, and then they both look at come upon this a bundle of cotton that's on the side of the road. So one guy goes, "Oh, okay," and so he puts down his load and picks up that to carry it down into the other town, and so into town, and so then the example here is just like, well, we've always, since beginning of this time, we've been acting in one way, and so then we sort of think, well, well, this is the way it's been for up to now, so why should I change? And it's the idea of when you have, the opportunity when these, when these rare things come together, to the teacher, the teaching, and the listener come together, then it's time to take advantage of that and sort of change what you did in the past. But here, this guy's saying, well, why should I change? So, I've been carrying this, and why would I pick up something new?
No, yeah. That did it, Akasura. Niba Dirva. Niba Chida, Tendula Seba Pangbasudwa. Takoa, Sonda, Yabu Marina, Mida, Lato the Canada, Yabude, Tindigo, Samjaco, Chida, Tendula Seba. Seba, Diana, David Pangures, Shegdua, Pangbalani. Tendula, Joa Combarchawa dance. Sebe, Core, Neba, Nyumbadan or Temples, Tendul Dea. Joa Comgores, and yes, only Labayinaco, Tea Yagamar, Targures, Yora. Sebe, Core, Neba, Nyumbadan Doge. Call a Sebe Wangeni, Lanu Juangi Quaco, Dustede, Nyumbadan Dores, Yora. Oh, that Tambo. This one.
Oh, Shendachi, young Yorwa.
Got it?
Ding, let's say they Dumba la Yore. Did Gaba Madabe?
Did Dumba?
Oh, Dumba.
Dumba la Giva.
Alas.
Joshua Tushata.
Alas, I got confused. Number Corla did.
Oh, Timba one young good Joshua.
Oh, the young,
Tandangani did Timba and got the young Duade. Timba got the Niba Cheda, Tendula Seba Pangbala Nichera, Tendula Joa Combarchawa Sera, and Sebe Core Neba Nubadan Tamba Sera, Tendula Joa Combarchawa Delaya, and then Yandrone, Mecumbe Neda, Tungena so you be Pangbachawa Yasera, Yandro de Pangudo, Tegudo, and make it you Pankiwachu to Tendru Tobachet and Digdo Segura. Tendrone Kaya Ne Yimbe, Tendru me, Kiwatu Cow Ne. And then they go course such a Yabudu Asagura. Your Mejawash in a day, Joa Comne, Tare Tapsi Jumendu, and then Digdu some Giora. Was she no answer? And then Andrew that Andrew, Joa regress, Joa com regress, the Shagdua. Oh, yeah.
So we're on this second section here under considering the disadvantages of cyclic existence. We're specifically eliminating attachment to happy rebirth. So it has two sections. One is aversion should be cultivated even to happy rebirths, and showing that to remain in cyclic existence out of attachment is like insanity. So here, the assertion aversion should be cultivated even to happy rebirths. So the assertion about this is that although bad rebirths or unfortunate rebirths must be avoided because they are states without freedom, full of many kinds of suffering, one need not feel aversion toward good rebirths because they are happy states. So then the answer to this is, it's proper to feel aversion towards good rebirths, just as one does towards bad ones. Well,
oh yeah, that is our day. Sudden take Vietnamese is your say thing, never meet to the Lato to see there. Only take back Kiwanga, take Belegi, Namiki Wangi, and the Nickers a care about the Nawada shower. The Nick Ombumaton so that you among your rescuer. Jodicona in Batonse. Then a Siba Seneda, Sumba Damba Namlana Siba, and a Lada meat and do net as we are, Kiwatizia, and a soldier Sube, Share Nation, Sumba, will go a name, but Damba Namla, Nagatu Sigua. Teach loves you to do slow new water. Didn't drive the Yamdo Love Shaga. Oh, Tendro de Keba Nam Jasido, Tendro Keba Yina, say Yaya Yoma Resiguara. When you lay your lama lube, Yanlada, when you lay your lama on the Geshe, Yanla Masana Rabatindeta, and Yanla Yambada, Wombu Masawata, Ulbuda, Jobotindeta, Mileko, Kalamabu Yorba, and they care about the Nawala Soba Kanga Yoshora. So, say thing that never Minam Gi, Tibenamini, Mendushin do ya. Mendushin do ya, Konyango at the Mambu Yores, what I Konatone, Tongos Dena, Siba Nese, Siba Nesom Mago Dendro Yenaya, Dendro Siba Yenaya, Soja Sube, so ne Shara than the Soja Sesag, Shara than Drava, Tsumbar, Pagbatamba Nambi, Nagi or Resigora. That to Major Shinchando. Soja Betunganya Sesag Shara Nashi, to the Sigura Resigora. Oh, Pena Shindo Chebe. What did you love, Shana?
So, if we read the root text here, it says,
Joshua. Penashindo Chebe, Lemboshi, Diabola, Magic Be, Chinje, Cheba Nacharashin. Lembochi, Diabope, Dributan Kabu in Burwa. And the question Dribuja, and the Baruja, when you done the some Chichema, Diabodega, and the Kobe Tubutanje. Chinje Cheba Jamne Kobe Kambalak Bache, Mambuche or Resigora, or Dina Resigora, Tambu Yaburis Tungi or the Yabuchi Kojabot and Danda Chibashara, Korea Kojabot some Jabamagachane, Kolichavachene, Kambalak was a shepherd to Gutanga shadow.
So, we'll read the root verse with the commentary and the example here. The root verse goes, on earth the maturation of ill deeds is seen to be only deleterious. Thus, to the wise, the world appears similar to a slaughterhouse. When it says the maturation of ill deeds, it's talking about birth, aging, sickness, death, and all these different sufferings. So then they're only, deleterious. So, am I saying that right? That word? Sometimes I miss. But they're awful, not good. Then, so the remains of previous contaminated actions are seen only to debilitate even those in a good rebirth, deformed limbs and members, defective senses, poverty, and so forth. Where it's saying the maturation of ill deeds, it's what it's talking about is that that even those who have good rebirths, then they have this leftover karma that they have to experience things like deformed limbs and members, defective senses, and poverty, and so forth. And these are unwanted. They would, this is not anything that anyone would want, but they're unwarranted maturation of the ill deeds of human beings living on earth. So then, thus the wise, noble beings, to them, cyclic existence seems like a slaughterhouse where living beings are killed. The idea is the slaughterhouse, but it's slaughterhouse in the sense that there's where just everybody, all the living beings are constantly being killed. It's a very miserable place. So cyclic existence just seems like a very miserable place. So the example is of a cherished minister was not afraid of the king and was punished later because of this. So the king favored this this minister, but then later on he lost the king's favor, and the minister punished him by, I mean the king punished the minister by cutting off his arms and legs like that, and so it, you know, for the minister everything looked really good until he lost the favor. I'm sorry to laugh at it, but until he lost the favor of the king.
Oh yeah, that is right. Yeah, Taniba Sebe injured Sebe core never nyomba than our temper nesudwa. Niba you get on my subject, even those way. Sebe core never nyomba than our temper sudwa. Sebe wanted any call and never had me in a yabudu some call and never let you me do. Tipangu me do some giora. Or the any nyomba than our sudwa. Nyomba than our tempane. Tambanam de Siba Sone don Sumbertona. Chi in Jigdemba da major shenase. Oh, Pagwe Kansa to Zugane, Siba Koala da me, Kawa Sambu Kandesina, Soja Sube, Shera than Drawa, Jigber and Shinto Tongi Yonas, Yora. And then Jigdemba Garanzo de K, some Jogmedua, Tim Major Jogmedua, take a rest and ask Yora. Chichi in Jigdemba da major shenase. Lange Yamba da Renewer and Shin Yembe Sherry. Chidarno Shina, or Lange Yamba Nashigi, some detacta degi or mare, Yamba Ranshi de Chires, Yora. Oh, the condition Yamba Senas, Chidarno Shinase. And Namshi Neba Mebale, Kedi Yamba Junanis. Chidangi me Sheba Nashi, Neba Meba, John Tubewangitos, a kitchen damage. Kalasa du Masayan Droche, Tinder Chesona, Yamba Sigdoa Sigora, getting Yamba Yunanis. Sine Yamba Mainshe, Keba Sushimarj. Siba Kora Nebade, Kondo Danga Jet and Trado, the Tinder Wangi, and a Chabang Yamba Rangshile Deva Mabuchik Doase. Tezota Yamba Gone, Tinyamba Maris, Jesu love to grace Yora. What did you love the anything, Dreba de Maloshana? Pagin Drebanium do love the Camado. Ah. You do it.
Drink it.
Yeah, Jigdana come manion by Lessigdwa. Joan Trubia wanted to us because you send back Kibu Mevche, Kitchen Damandashe, the color sauce in the Masaya Landre Yora, and not Jigdan in Yambasi Yora Shera. Jigdana comes, Luigi comes, such a milo. Manion Bala, Namshin Juba, Solne Mebala, Namjuna, Namshi Mevaja, cause some truth on the Sigara. Mebale, Nyambashi Churchins, Nyambas Lagudwa. Oh, Kede, the number in Jurnane, Sibana Neba, Nam Nyamba Mainsh, Keba Sushi, Mawar Jurde, Sosejo Namja, Che Merigbe, Su Mambo Doje, to Dabsu Mawala, Sem Nedo, Minesos, and then call a nebe mitozo, Sebada, Kondanga, Jeda, Chado, Wagi, Cheba, and then Namguda Mirabe, Cheva Doja Mambusi do Asiora, and the Kesha be millionaire consumer. Mambo Rangshin by Shivat and the Shaggy or Asera. I did then Yamba Sheba Rangshin to Beneva, Yamba one at the Marves Yora.
Yeah. So we can read the root text here in connection with the commentary. This is again showing that to remain in cyclic existence out of attachment is like insanity. So then here the question is, if the wise see worldly existence like a slaughterhouse, if the noble beings see that it's like a slaughterhouse, why would ordinary people, what are we calling them, the common or ordinary beings, feel no horror? Why wouldn't obviously the noble beings are horrified by this. So then the answer is they are insane as a mad elephant. And the idea of insanity here is that like a mad elephant, their mind is just unable to stay focused on one thing. They've lost any kind of stability. So insane. The question is, insane in what way? And the root text answers, if insane means that one's mind is unstable, what wise person would say that those in worldly existence are not insane? So then if you limit if you give the definition of insanity as to being that the mind is unable to stay focused, then what an intelligent or wise person would say that those in the worldly existence are not insane. Of course, they are insane. In the world, someone whose mind does not function with normal stability due to an imbalance of physical constituents is called insane. So there's something happening in the elements in the body that then cause the mind to not be able to focus. Well, in the mind and body, that cause the mind to be disturbed, and then it's unable to focus. So that's what we call insanity. Then, if that is insanity, what intelligent person would claim that those in worldly existence are not insane? So here, intelligent person is referring to somebody who has some kind of wisdom, and or people use the word like discriminating intelligence, right? Or discernment. That such a person. That person would claim that those in worldly existence are not insane. So then, ordinary people who want many outrageous things and speak impulsively do not have sound minds. So here it's talking about ordinary or common people. Well, it usually says common people, but ordinary beings then who want many outrageous things means that they're engaged in the 10 non-virtues, and so then here they speak impulsively, means then they're always engaged in different things like divisive speech and lying, all these, and so then they're in doing that, then they're not really, they couldn't have sound minds, or they're insane.
Oh yeah. Penangajo di karsore. Jonga tumni ko dosi you ma des de yala kala sas de masen rosde nyamba sigyora. Kondo rabi sen kondo shawan de gyursona mi mangbo se shagdo. Mi ko kare ina sutuna ko se share de yora. Anu so se chigdo kashe kondo sane. Kedo ngone ra nyamba takin de nyamba chunjure do. The Tangone Yambarchis Yora. Kondo City, me shave Rangshin, the man share Kondo Dangaja Tadoge, Mima was a bit Gulomambusa Yora. They didn't want any Yambarchis, me as a Kanga Segiore. And this also a Segiore, till the Sember Rangshin to Manonera was Yora. Then Joan to the Cocalas, the Manga Sagmesa Manduchene, to take Shida Yampas Marwa. Let do a racing door. Chigdire. When Tama Chanju Semba Dozoge, Pagwe Kansa Dozo, Koa Dozon, Tendro Yinako, Pedunga Rangshin and the Tungri Sigdoa. Amade. Or Dingazo de Pejan and Gudoa. She bet Latin Drawa and Duji Dungepu Medise. Maranzo Society of the Lagwana, she till Puchi Unike Haku Marwa. Pushana Haku Marwa. Pagwa Migdan Drawa, Pagwa and a Migdan Drawa. Mina Puchun Shinsun and Sam Haku, the Tunga Haku Yara. Dinashin Pagwe Kansake. Dunga Samarin, you at Dunga Chavan to the language, you want to Shama, around the journey, me, Lul, High, Lul, Langbayana, Pet Dunga Rangshin and the Tonto Yara. Maranza Society Yoga Tonto, Sorgi or Mariabu do someday Yara. Or dig Papa getting the Tonga and Zut in the Tonto Mares et Yara. What you need, Ditama, did and then.
So there's two examples you can make about this. One is the example of a crazy person. Usually we think of a crazy person as somebody, well, the example of a crazy person would be somebody who couldn't sit down at the table and have a meal. They'd just get up and walk around and go outside, and then you say, oh, what's wrong with that person? Their mind is, what do you say, so unstable that you'd think of them as a crazy person, but that's nothing next to somebody who comes under the influence of their hatred and pride, and then such a person could go out and kill many people, and also and then also even kill themselves. So that's really the crazy person. So then there's also an example of when we talk about a noble being as opposed to an ordinary being. A noble being, an ordinary being like ourselves, are sensitive to suffering as if it was a hair in the. This means that sometimes it just means like a hair in our palms. Okay, if you don't feel that, if there's just like a little hair in the palm, we're not talking about growing in the palm. I always thought it was growing, but we're just talking about it's just like sensitive to a hair in the palm. Okay, you're not sensitive to that at all. So then, but a noble being then is very sensitive. That they can feel that hair in the palm of their hand, and what that means is that they're we're not sensitive to the nature of the suffering or the miserable nature of cyclic existence. We're not at all sensitive to that. It's like it was a hair in the palm of our hands, and so then. But a noble being, beyond just being sensitive to the suffering of evident suffering and the suffering of change, they're sensitive to this pervasive suffering of conditionality, where you're always under the influence of your afflictions and your contaminated karma. So that's the kind of they're sensitive to that kind of that third kind of suffering. That
oh yeah, bedila benediction. Benediabo, she bula chen deba, yola semnedo menebe, bu tongar mendebe logi bashino setwa. Oh, de gabachilia susupuchi amberko pe. Kabuche ko mena mandige lepsa de ne so pangwal nya be ku tinde che pe kabu yo yin da te nyima ko sem juan tu de ko made cha ne budi tong de zam pe de budi mayong nge til mayong che ko lev da ga me thong ba chi yo ra te budi sem du da che ne be pe musala tu nge kirang ke be kirang me de ba kare che son se ra Keran mende ba ke che ma so nga keran ngema na shi ga mendo keran men ka do se jo chu sa ko tinde yong ga ra o di shin no sha da ti.
So the example is of a king who loved his son and was always like holding him in his lap and giving him a great amount of affection. So then but one day when the son came to visit his father, then he said, "Go away," and just wouldn't see him and didn't want to even look at him. And then so the son was very upset, and he pleaded with his father, "Oh, what did I do what improper thing did I do that caused you to feel this way?" And he said, "Oh, you didn't do anything. I just can't stand the sight of you." And so what this means is that some kind of because he had some kind of an imbalance in his constituents, all the elements in his mind and body. Then his mind was disturbed, and he just couldn't. He completely changed. This is an example of that kind of insanity. So that's the end of today's. This morning's reading.